begin shortly. Wait a couple minutes for Bob to. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 12:04. Opening ceremonies by Lisa Pearson. Oh.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now moving on to roll call. Sam? Sam's back.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Soilu.
Here.
Trustee Murphy. Trustee Pearson.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Crane.
Here.
Dr. Smith.
Here.
All right, number 4, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Crane, seconded by Trustee Anderson. Roll call vote.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes?
Trustee Soilu.
Yes.
Trustee Murphy. Trustee Pearson.
Yes.
Trustee Anderson.
Yes.
Trustee Crane.
Yes.
Okay, the vote was 5-0-1 absent. Now, community input on special agendized items. I have 2, and I want to make sure that you want to make your public comment now or before when we come back from closed. Now. Okay. First one is Charlene McFloy.
Good afternoon, Board. Good afternoon, President Wiegand and Board, Dr. Smith and Cabinet. I'm speaking to the budget impact of the upcoming special election. I am very disappointed that a political group that portrays itself as fiscally conservative and concerned about government overreach would waste close to $500,000 of our taxpayer dollars on an unnecessary election. A reasonable and qualified Area 5 citizen with children currently attending a Newport-Mesa Unified School was selected by a reasonable and qualified board. Area 5 will now be unrepresented for about 5 months, and notably during these budget discussions. Whoever is elected will only serve 1 year before they have to begin fundraising efforts for the next election in 2026. Sour grapes will cost our Newport-Mesa children close to $500,000. Those funds could have been used for the Newport-Mesa Soccer Classic, otherwise known as the Daily Pilot Cup, and Battle of the Books program without causing a deficit, which is shown on slide 6 of the funding overview, which is coming up in your presentation. Those funds could have been used for the after-school swim and safety program without causing a deficit. I am hoping this very large, unbudgeted expense will be addressed and where the funds are coming from in this study session. Thank you very much, and I know that you are responsible and excellent board members.
Thank you. Next up, Martha Floor, you want to speak now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll be here for the long haul.
Good afternoon, President Wiegand, Vice President Oselu, and Clerk Murphy. Trustees, Dr. Smith, Cabinet, and community members. My name is Martha Flora, and I am the Harbor Council President of the PTA. PTAs across the country have stood by our mission for over 125 years to positively impact the lives of all children and families. We take pride in our efforts, which include initiatives such as Prop 28, the late start for secondary schools, class size reduction, lunches at schools, and vaccines. The mission of the PTA is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. Collaboration, commitment, diversity, respect, and accountability are our core values. The Harbor Council would like to express our gratitude and urgently request that the discretionary funds used to support field trips, outdoor science camp for our kids, STEAM activities, and many, many more funds that you use with discretion to support our children and families be maintained in this year's budget, despite the unexpected, ridiculous $500,000 expenses due to an election. That was not, you guys did a great job on selecting the person. Thank you.
All right. Now, let's see. We are going to close and move into closed session. The items are A, public employee discipline dismissal release, and we will return at 1 p.m. hopefully. We will try to make it as close to that as possible, but you know, sometimes it might go over. All right. Thank you for sitting by. All right, well, we're coming back from closed at 1:25. And we are heading into our 7A board budget study session at 1:25. So, Jeff, you have the floor.
All right, well, it's good to be here with you all. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the overarching environment that we're in and some of the principles that we're going to be talking about. So, first of all, the state has a structural fiscal problem. It's on the non-Prop 98 side, but we know how that can worm into the Prop 98 side. And so it's a structural issue that they're dealing with. They're still dealing with that. We also are looking at some property value issues where the markets are gyrating. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. We know that being community funded, our funding is largely based on property value. So we want to be careful about that. And then the federal government, as you've heard, that they're talking about eliminating the Department of Ed, and so there's some federal uncertainty out there. We receive about $15 million in federal funding. That's about 3% of our budget. Granted, it's not a super large piece of our budget, but it's $15 million. And so, but the good news is we are fiscally stable. We could handle some uncertainty in that regard if we needed to. But hopefully don't have to.
And I would just add to that, and we're also prepared to fight for some of the neediest students in our district for whom those resources are intended and promised. So we're talking about IDEA resources, we're talking about Title I resources or school meals. These benefit some of our neediest student populations. And so while we can and will, because of our stability and your fiscal stewardship, handle it, we're also ready to fight for those resources.
And then with your leadership and Dr. Smith's encouragement, we always approach things from a net zero FTE growth mindset. How can we do things differently? Those kinds of things. And so that's part of our consideration when we're talking about budgets. And then you all have been very supportive of maintaining reserves, a responsible reserve. Right now it's about 21.5%. And then our program, we built up a lot of program that meets the needs, the priorities that you've directed us on. And so we want to maintain that program. And then we have a focus on impact. We want to make sure that we're making an impact and it's the highest impact that we can make. That chart on the side, that's the U.S. Economic Policy Uncertainty Index, and it's the highest it's been since over 100 basis points since February 22. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and that just underscores the need for us to be cautious when we're developing a budget. And so let's talk about the board's priorities. And so for academic achievement, we've done a number of things for this priority. And to give you context, a lot of these things started out with COVID funding. That funding is now starting to roll off. And so the context there for that is that as this funding rolls off, the general fund is picking up these kinds of programs. Any comments on the academic achievement side? Feel free to stop me if you have comments, and we'll stop. And then, of course, on the whole child support, these are some of the things that we've instituted for whole child support. And then on the meaningful communication, engagement with constituents, you can see those things. And of course, we have the developing of our facility master plans, maintenance plans, We've done a lot of work with security in terms of securing our sites, lobby security, SRP, alerting systems, those kinds of things. So, and it's been a big lift, and you'll see a lot of work going on this summer. And then other supports, we made a lot of progress on our being competitive in our compensation this year. You are supporting other post-employment benefits. Those are the obligations that we have to our employees for early retirement, for health and welfare. We've talked about a responsible reserve. AB 218, this is legislation that has moved expectations in terms of claims associated with sexual molestation, and that's a big ticket item for our insurance. And so we've had to increase our expenditure profile to meet our insurance obligations that we have. And then Juneteenth and summer assistance. So discretionary budget going into this next year is somewhat limited, more so than it's been in the past. And so we want to be very intentional about what we do with our budget. So when we look at this is the unrestricted general fund. This is kind of how it's the components of the general fund, unrestricted general fund. So this is personnel here, largest piece of the pie, personnel. And then we have a slice of supplies, we have some operations, we have reserves, and then there's this discretionary piece. Now, let's talk about how we define that. Discretionary is the amount of the scope of money that you could, through reallocation, doing things differently, impact in the short term without causing a whole lot of disruption. And that scope is about $25 million. Now, of that $25 million, we think there's about $550,000 that's really unencumbered, that we could, there's no commitments there that we could do something with. So when we're talking about moving forward, we're talking about that discretionary piece, both the piece that's uncommitted and the piece there where we can do things differently. And that's where we need your guidance on how we can do things differently, things that you would like us to look at or not look at, and to do that in that manner. So let's look at our 25-26 considerations. Now, these are things that we believe we've heard from you that you would like us to take a look at. If we're missing something, please let us know, and we'll add that to our list of things to consider. But first of all, let's talk about universal transitional kindergarten. And so, who would like to talk about that?
Yeah, so just as far as universal transitional kindergarten, looking out to next year, the state is expanding the scope of the number of months that transitional kindergarten students would qualify. Currently, we are covering 9 months of students at the TK level. June, July, and August for next year is the state's plan in regards to universal TK, and it truly will become more or less the 8th grade level at elementary, including TK, kindergarten, and 1st grade through 6th grade. So that's the state plans. Another aspect to what the state is planning is to move from what currently is a 12-to-1 student to adult ratio to a 10-to-1 student to adult ratio. So those are the plans that are currently underway and being considered by us as far as what it is that we would elect to do and make decisions on, both the staffing and expanding to include TK as an entire year's worth of students who would qualify for the program.
And as you're aware, this is completely unfunded by the state. The board picks up the cost for this entire program, and it's significant. This year we'll spend just over $7 million just in staffing alone.
I think it's important to understand too, and maybe you've read this, some of the community funded districts, which we are, have decided to no longer do UTK. But because that's a priority for this board, we continue to do it and plan for it in outgoing years.
Well, and we've already seen increase in reading scores because of it. So it works. It works.
Yep.
So then support services. We know this is an area where we want to always be intentional about, and it's one that you've communicated to us to be intentional about. This area kind of includes it's mostly facilities, maintenance, operations, purchasing, warehouse, information technology, fiscal risk, transportation. There's a small piece of ed services that's in there, but it's a relatively small piece. It's about 20% of our budget. And so although the growth rate for this is about the same as the growth rate for the other piece of the budget over the past 3 years, we're always looking for opportunities to do things differently. For example, we've looked at our overtime, and over the past 3 years, we've reduced overtime hours by 14%. We've looked at doing things to get more out of performance, and so, for example, M&O, they're now collecting data on performance, and so we're hoping to see some good things that will come out from that. From a policy perspective, these budget study sessions have been helpful and helped us to come to. You've supported higher effort in terms of routine restricted maintenance, and so we are doing a whole lot of work, and that's been really helpful. Our roofing systems, pavement, you name it, all of these facility systems that if not maintained will cause disruption. And so we've made a whole lot of progress in terms of our flooring, roofing. It's just been, your support has been really helpful in that regard. So thank you. And then we've had a lot of work done for our safety. We're installing cameras. We hope to have that all in by May. Window tinting by the end of this year, this fiscal year. Fence screening, and we're working on alerting systems that we hope to have in by the end of this school year too. So in addition to that, we've got some major projects going in. We have the Newport Harbor Aquatics Complex, the Estancia High School Performing Arts Theater. We're doing NPR fans and audio visual for all of our NPRs. We put in some TK expansion facilities and planned shade and restroom renovation. So a lot in terms of support services. And then let's talk about some other things we've heard. Used to talk about Newport-Mesa Classic, Soccer Classic, Swim Safety, and Battle of the Books.
So one of the board goals is that whole child, in addition to academic achievement and excellence, is also that whole child, and we know many of these experiences outside of the school day help create all those opportunities for other types of success beyond academics. And so things that are kind of growing in opportunity across the district are the Soccer Classic. And all of these in this bubble are things talking about, like, how do we bring these to a greater scale? So the Soccer Classic for all of our schools, swim safety, particularly for Title I schools. How can we create opportunities after school to keep students safe? In one area we know it is one of the highest causes of death for little people is swimming and drowning. How can we contribute to that? And then things like Battle of the Books and other academic experiences outside of the school day. Those are all things that we know students and families enjoy, and they do come at many logistical costs in terms of supervision, in terms of materials for those actual experiences, many times including transportation for getting to what might be a culminating event or something that isn't offered on our campus. So those are experiences we've begun exploring because of the will of the board, and just knowing how big or small, these are all, because they're after school, they're things we can grow or contract based on the amount of money and the priority that the board has. So we just want to have a sense of how far we want to be in fully implementing ideas like this.
And then we have a summer school.
Which is the same. So we receive ELOP funds as a district, and those expanded learning opportunities come from the state and are designated for unduplicated students. And those are students who either qualify for Title I, homeless, foster youth, And so we get money for their after school and for summer school, and the money we get from ELOP is for a 9-hour summer school program. So it really is that entire extended day. A bit of learning in the morning, we usually do till noon, and then enrichment activities after that. A consideration we always have because of the makeup and demographics of our district is how big or small do we want summer school, knowing that those state funds, that's a grant, those funds from the state have a limited target. How much do we want to contribute to allow the rest of our community to participate as well? And that, again, we can grow or constrict based on how much money we have, but the money we're guaranteed right now, this could also in time be taken off the state's grant list, so we do have to foresee a future where it's not always like this. But those ELOP funds right now do pay for unduplicated students. Now that's not schools, that's students, so no matter where that student is in the district, they have the rights and opportunity to that program. But that is a consideration for the board, because if we want to expand outside of that grant funding from the state, we would need the funds to do that.
So in this next slide that we're going to talk about, we're not asking or suggesting that there's going to be any kind of cuts or reductions, but we are identifying how much the expenditure profile on an ongoing basis is going to be raised. And so we want to be thoughtful about how we fund that expenditure profile. So when we look at this here, we can see that we've got after school, swim safety, the Newport-Mesa Soccer Cup, Classic, summer school and Battle of the Books, and then Universal Transitional Kindergarten. And we kind of see the scope of the expenditure profile, what we're going to add to our expenditure profile, which is about $5 million. And so this is kind of what we want to have a discussion about and get your guidance on in terms of what options we would have for staff to look at in terms of how to fund that and get that done. Because we are going to get it done. And so one of the options that we have is the Irvine Company Endowment. In the past, where the Irvine Company Endowment can be used for things that are non-core, anything that's above the core offering for the district. And out of that, you can spend up to 7% of all accumulated earnings every year. In the past, you have authorized staff to fund the audio-visual upgrades for the NPRs. So that includes what you're looking at here. The numbers already includes that. And so if you go down to the row that says available 7% of all accumulated earnings, that's how much money you could spend every year on something that would be non-core. So for example, in 24-25, that would be $487,697. So that would be one option. Let's talk then about, and this is where we're going to be all ears, and talk about some of the options that we would have. So on the top hand, or on the left hand side, you see all of the different programs that we're talking about, and on the top hand, you see some of the funding options or solutions that we might have. So the TIC fund, savings, support services, phase-ins, fees, donations, service delivery models, and one-time money. So for example, if we were to define, maybe throw some things out, the TIC fund could be used for some of those things that are non-core. Savings, that could be different delivery, service delivery models. For example, UTK enrollment. We could do some things there with that. We could do staffing ratios that would float. We could look at ways to rely less on service providers for summer programs or other kinds of enrichment programs. For support services, we could look at the routine restricted maintenance funding target. We could look at facility project pacing. We could look at fleet replacement schedules, efficiencies, and service priorities levels could be explored in that regard. We could look at other kinds of operational kinds of things that would produce savings. And then we've got phase-ins. We could phase in UTK staffing ratios or different programs there. Phase-ins are an option. We could look at fees and donations. For example, we charge fees for our facilities. We actually are really low in terms of when you look at other districts, what other districts charge for facilities. We could also look at developer fees. We have TK facility needs, and those developer fees can be used for that TK program. And then there's one-time money that we could look at that you could temporarily fund these things for a period of time. So we're all ears in terms of what your guidance in this regard.
And the list of items.
In list of items. So we want to open up for comments, questions from the board?
I have a quick observation, and actually, in the interest of the public, on slide number 6, which is the funding overview, when you use the word deficit, we just want to make sure that we're not deficit spending. This is a deficit for this particular graphic, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have, though, projected a unrestricted general fund deficit for the 25-26 year. That's to be expected. We've had all this one-time money. Now it's starting to roll off, and we have built up our ending fund balance over the years to accommodate this. And so our ending fund balance will go down to the amount that it was at before COVID.
Okay.
So on a percentage basis. So we're going to achieve a soft landing there, but that's to be expected. That's not to be anything concerned about. It's just when you get all this one-time money, you can't spend it all in the same year that you get it. So you have to. It's being spent in a year later than what we've gotten it. So, yeah.
It's good to hear.
And they're not budgeted currently. We're not in deficit for 24, 25, so we didn't overextend ourselves.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
Where the red is.
Okay. Great.
They weren't budgeted. They're not budgeted.
That's right.
So anyone want to have a comment? I know we all have our thoughts.
I'll just reiterate again, I love TK, since I said it at the wrong time, but I'll just say it again.
There's no wrong time.
I said it at the wrong time. Because it is it's already showing such great results for our readers. And so I would hate to see that go away. Obviously, sort of on the fence on expanding TK if we can afford it. Obviously, it would be in support of it. But I do know that we will probably keep getting more and more families who will want to use TK because there isn't as much preschool and daycare in the county as we would all like. And so a parent, family's best option is TK. And that's a good thing because we want to get them in our schools, and get them, used to being at school, working with teachers, the earlier the better and they have better outcomes. So that's my thoughts on TK.
Yeah.
Plus they're so cute.
It's a great way to see cute kids. I was looking at, speaking back to TK as we're talking about TK right now, the student-to-teacher ratio, I know that the state is recommending going to 10-1, but since we don't get any state funding, we don't necessarily need to adhere to that recommendation. So, currently today it's 12-1 and doing a great job. So I say if it's doing a great job today, 12-1, and we're adding 3 more months of 4-year-olds coming to our schools, I think 12-1 seems sufficient for where we're at. And knowing that, in some classes, if they need extra help, parent volunteers, and that's always wanted. I like the idea of having universal TK because we have seen the results, but it also gets our students into our district and enjoying what Newport-Mesa has to offer, which is a lot. So I think that's wonderful, as well as it teaches our students at a young age what we expect in our district as a student. And I think that's only going to help us and help our teachers for years to come as our kids matriculate through the system.
100%. UTK also was socialization, of course, right, as well. But isn't there an effort in Sacramento? Assemblywoman Addis, AB 1391, is working to potentially fund UTK for the community-funded schools. And so we need to keep pushing on that end. I know when I was in Sacramento, I made sure, and I've already contacted our legislators that are here, our own legislators, to make sure that this effort is successful. So we may know in the next 6 to 9 months if this bill passes. And so whoever's out there, please make sure you contact your legislators.
And you'll remember Kevin Gordon with Capital Advisors, that one of the contracts you have is for this type of awareness and advocacy. He shared this quite a while ago and mentioned that there was a vehicle moving. We have that now with Assemblymember Addis. We had a local Orange County Superintendent's Advocacy Day 2 weeks ago, and this was one of the topics that we pushed forward, is that we're going to say it's funded for all, then fund it for all. So we're hopeful, and anyone listening, tell a friend that, in our district, think about this, we have more Title I students than any other community-funded district in the state of California. Half of our elementary schools are Title I schools. Our students need these resources. They need the academics, they need the socialization just as much as any other districts.
Great.
One other thing too, I agree with everything that's been said and just wanted to add perhaps a way to increase our capacity for universal TK and is to enhance our early childhood pathways. We have one school currently that is doing that. I think it would be great to expand that to at least 2 others, but perhaps offer it across the district at our 4 comprehensive schools as a way for those students who serve directly in their community, but some of them are serving even younger family members at times, but really creating a pathway too for teacher preparation going forward, and having a really economic way for us to add supervision in the classroom, but not necessarily increase master teacher salaries that would be needed.
To help with the 12-to-1 ratio. And I'd much rather open it up to those extra 3 months and keep the 12-to-1, which we know is working right now.
Any other comments on UTK?
UTK, all in.
Yeah,
Just to paint a global picture as far as how many TK students are currently in our district, we have 535 students currently, and we're projecting 675. So the growth potentially for next year is 140 students, which with a population of 675 TKs potentially next year, we're looking at that being about 13% of all of our students at the elementary level.
Wow, that's huge.
It'll make playground time so fun.
Back to Universal TK, I know that there are classroom expectations for children that are that age, particularly like bathroom access. So I would kind of want to see, or do want to see, if we can make sure that all of our TK classrooms are held in a class that has a bathroom in it. I know that there's at times, maybe kindergartners' classrooms in those because that's what we offered. And everyone loves their classroom and doesn't want to give it up. But as we get younger students that might have more potty training issues, we probably need to make sure that all of our TKs are in those classrooms with the bathrooms.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay, any other TK comments? Or we can always move on to another thing and come back, but I'm trying to.
Carol, I'll take swim safety.
Okay, for 100.
Yes.
You got it.
I think we all know, one of the bigger issues in Orange County is certainly our little guys, our little folks drowning, unfortunately, and not having access to swimming programs that'll, teach them how to swim. So I feel like it's a solid statement and such a great it's a great thing for our district to be able to provide swim safety for our kids and to make sure that they that nothing happens to them, especially once they. I think it's a great way to set them up too, to be able to join sports. You know, they can. You know, there's water polo, swimming. I mean, it kind of sets them up to really try that pathway if that's something that they end up liking. And we all know that joining our excellent sports programs is another great way to stay in school and stay committed to your education and all the benefits of being involved on a team and all the social skills that brings. So I think there's a lot of reasons to love our swim safety program, and eventually I think a couple of us have talked that if it's at all possible, we would expand it. Would like to see more swim safety programs in the district if we can, because it's such an asset to the district to be able to provide this for our kiddos. So that's my thought on swimming. Not that I am a good swimmer, but maybe
You can save yourself.
Yeah.
I think swimming is very important, particularly with the amount of coastline we have here. I think it behooves us in this community to make sure that our kids are safe. So when they're out using all of our community resources, we're not providing an extra burden on that. And if we can we can provide them with ocean safety as well. That would be a huge benefit. But regardless of swim safety, it's kind of like reading. Wherever you're going to go in life, you're going to encounter some kind of water and pool and things like that. So it's, I think, definitely a skill that you should have as you leave school.
Yeah.
I think one of the things too, I know part of this is thinking through how we're going to fund some of these. And I think we have the Irvine Company endowment for things that are 1 year allocation. To me, I think it could be helpful, since we want to increase the swim item, is to perhaps for this upcoming year use some or all of the endowment for that, and then work on partnerships. I know Hogue is really invested in this. There are a lot of foundations and grants that are available, and I think our cities also. It would be really great to do. I mean, there's community block grants. There's all kinds of ways that we can partner with others to fund, and just kind of leaning into this a bit more. It's been interesting to hear how many even Orange County foundations have been wanting to fund some of these programs and haven't seen them as even viable yet. And so for us to have this, I think we wouldn't necessarily have to incur all of the costs, particularly ongoing, but for the, grants sometimes take a little bit to ramp up to. So it could be helpful maybe just at least for 1 year to lean into that Irvine piece for it.
And with the board support, we were able to pilot our program this year. And so for those who don't know what it looks like, is an after-school program and what it's been so far. So when we have that figure about what it looks like as an additional cost, it has been in the after-school program a bus going, which is about 50 students a bus, and families volunteer. So it is purely volunteer. It's like a field trip. They do that for 4 weeks, and then through a strong partnership with the YMCA and the city, their pools are the pools we go to, the pools that are in the community, and their instructors are giving the swim lessons, some of which is dry instruction and some of which is in the pool. And so right now, our vision of scaling up, again, because we are reliant on the pools of Costa Mesa and the Y, would be the city of Costa Mesa would be to have a bus from every Title I school, and we could do that. If we did that annually, we imagine that would cost the figure we have. We could maybe do 5 schools 1 year, 5 schools the next, depending on how much money we have. But if we kept doing 50 students per school, and this is sometimes families, so it's multiple grade levels, it's not a single grade level, opened up, that a constant flow of that, we would be able to get a majority of students by the time they leave elementary school and bring in families. We've been meeting on a monthly basis with many in the swim community who are interested in this, or the water community. It keeps growing in a lovely organic fashion. But there are so many swimming opportunities and water opportunities. We have students going from the Whittier program to the junior guard, for example, that we're really excited about, the opportunity that opens for the family. But also educating families about how families have access to these city resources. They are their resources to take advantage of. And even in our preschool programs and the learning link that we do, making sure that we're bringing in these resources so families are getting more water safe as well as the students. But right now, going to scale looks like that across the 10 Title I schools. And again, in the after-school program, and that is assuming that our partners can kind of keep up with us and offering that many sessions a year, because they are getting the swim instructors together, and swim instruction, of course, is a much lower teacher than a sort of a teacher to swimmer ratio.
Yeah. What I like about this graphic here on the page 6 graphic is that you're showing us the maximum, but with a lot of room for creativity or hybrid options. Because I'm looking at all these numbers like, oh my gosh, but oh wait, we can modify and do a hybrid, which is what you just offered an example. You said we can focus on 5 schools and then another 5. And so it's good for us to know that, staff is willing to do that and come up with creative options that will be more affordable, doable, sustainable, etc. And I think in the spirit of today, Battle of the Books, today was Battle of the Books, which is an amazing program that has been on a volunteer basis for some of the schools in the area. Having that as one of the options that we can spend our money on in order to meet the needs of our advanced students, which has been a need for a long time. I know that parents have spoken from all over the district how we need to offer more GATE or high achieving programs for those who need to reach new levels, which I know our students are capable of. There's a lot to that, especially since it also correlates with our board priorities of academic achievement, whole child support, because Battle of the Books not only teaches the love of learning and books, but also sportsmanship, team competition, friendly competition, so much. So I'm all in for Battle of the Books while we're talking about it.
I'm all in favor of Battle of the Books and going beyond. I know you said you have been researching extra things that we can do besides Battle of the Books, but to be able to expand Battle of the Books so the entire district can do it and we can get more participation. For those of you that don't know Battle of the Books, these kids have read 22 books this school year. I mean, that's for 100,000 of it, for such a small amount of money, to get that out there to our advanced students, get that opportunity out there to the advanced students. I mean, it would be silly for us not to invest the money to have this district-wide. And I know we've all been speaking, I'd love to see this in geography, I'd love to see it in math, Odyssey of the Mind. Can you speak to that a little bit, Carl, about?
I think like other things, the direction of the board and certainly from the superintendent has really to be able to offer world-class experiences for all of our students. And how do we do that? Not only through athletics, but also through academics.
Yep.
And at the elementary level, as we begin to prepare them for secondary, there are things that we could do outside of the school day. We have been working very hard to have robust experiences during the school day, from the science specialists that we have to the number of GATE teachers that are being trained in GATE and other experiences for the classroom. There are things after school and like you were saying, healthy academic competitions like Odyssey of the Mind, like the science decathlons, like math decathlons, spelling bees, and other things that we could do. And we have 22 elementary school districts. 20 of them are all grade levels and have upper grade students. That we could host our own internal tournaments, experiences, end of kind of season activities that really could be powerful and enjoyable for families and students and everyone else. Those are a lot of logistics, as we are learning somewhat painfully from the Newport Classic. That's a lot of supervision. That's, So there are a lot of things involved in that. I do know we would love to believe that we could host all of these through the help of volunteers, and they do so much for our district. I in no way want to undersell their importance in our community, but to be able to be consistent and clear across the district at that level of supervision, there are a lot of logistics. There's the staffing, there's the materials involved, and usually they're not that much. When we came up with that figure for the books, for example, like we're looking at always being efficient with money. We are public stewards of those dollars. We want to make sure that they're all reasonable, but how do we get students those books? All of those things, how do we get them to wherever we're going to have this event? What's the transportation cost? All of those things, again, across 20 schools. What seems like a small amount across 20 schools begins to add up. And then Jeff reminds me that I add up all the time. So we just kind of want to be fair about what those are. But there are several things we could do after school that I think most people believe would be incredible experiences for students. And that's kind of probably just the tip of the iceberg. We could find even more. There are a lot of amazing academic things to do for elementary students.
But Socorro, so like I can envision, like College Park, Sonora, Paularino, like being in their own little competition, right? And that driving up their reading levels as well. So like we could start out like that where it wouldn't necessarily be this big, expensive, district-wide competition necessarily.
I think, yes. Well, we can do anything, right? We're creating our future, so we could do anything. However, what we always want to do as well is remain parity in the district. So it would be great for the 4 zones to compete against each other.
Sure.
But we could do bracket. start March Madness right now, so we all know about brackets, and so everybody doesn't have to be traveling every day, everywhere. So it could be a smaller. It doesn't have to be 20. Because it doesn't have to be because Davis Cup.
I'd rather us be able to do a version of it than just not do it because district-wide it would just be too expensive, right?
To limit ourselves.
But certainly.
Well, we have to lift it logistically anyway, so believe me, it's gonna be
We'll just model it after the Pilot Cup, after we'll just model it that way.
NCAA.
I think as we're talking about also the Pilot Cup and academic kind of competitions and pushing our academic, achievement, and that's one of our goals and big priorities. While I think the Soccer Classic is so fun and kids really enjoy it, if we're funding things and we're an academic institution, I would want to focus on academic more competitions. And that might be a controversial thing to say, and I'm sorry for all my sports fans, and I am one of them. But from what I hear from parents, is that they want more STEAM education. They want more. How does my kid get better for the skills for today and for tomorrow? And I would love to be able to provide something for that. And we've got Project Lead the Way right now with in our elementary schools. And I would like to go even beyond that because I think that's what we need more of. And if that is sort of a after-school robotics competition or whatever, those would be amazing. I know they have those things for elementary school, and just Newport Harbor has their new robotics program or after-school club, and they have been doing road shows at different STEAM nights throughout the district, and the kids get really excited, and even particularly, I see a lot more females getting involved in that, which is lacking in science fields. So I would love to maybe take the dollars that we're using currently for the Soccer Classic and see more STEAM academic programs.
I agree. Because it is our board priorities, academic achievement, and we are education first. And there's a lot of focus on sports as a culture and a mindset, but our job is education first.
I think one of the things.
No, I just want to agree with what was said about I, as a soccer fan and a sports fan, I'm just having a hard time making the math work here. I would love to fund the Soccer Classic, but hearing all these other opportunities that aren't even on the table yet, like Odyssey of the Mind and math decathlons and all these things, I really think we need to open some space up in the budget for those things, like this Battle of the Books, which is great, and getting that expanded to everywhere. I would just venture that unlike my colleague, Trustee Murphy, I think actually one of the most critical aspects of doing Battle of the Books or decathlons or Odyssey of the Mind is that cross the whole district interaction, not just the Title Ones against the Title Ones. Because as a student that did Odyssey of the Mind,
I didn't mean like that. I just want to start with the way we take them.
but I think design it to the, like, then maybe it's just 3 schools in Costa Mesa, 3 schools in Newport Beach, expand it that way, but don't expand it zone by zone, but expand it with the whole vision in mind.
I don't know how much they'd want to fight or compete against each other. That might be like a motivator.
Yes, as someone that did Odyssey of the Mind from my low-income school, that one of the best parts of that as a child was getting to see those higher end schools and being like, whoa, they built that. Like, that's even possible. We have like our, cardboard car that we found and we could like metal. And we were like, wow, okay, there's a whole big world out there, and part of the benefit to our Title I schools is interacting with non-Title I schools, and I don't want that to get lost in some desire to do it piece by piece by piece. It should just be the whole system, and whatever parts of the system you can get, 2 schools from each zone. If that's all we can do, then cool. But to keep the intent of access and kids meeting other kids from across the whole district. So.
And you heard today, Sonora was in the finals for the 2nd year in a row at Battle of the Books against district schools and private schools, right? And
because
so
the new reading curriculum is
to that
working
point,
so well at
and
Sonora.
UTK.
No, but the reading curriculum is working so well, the new one at Sonora. I mean, that's part of it.
And the thing that this district does well, I want to come back to, and you did it years ago, so I take no credit for it, was advanced students aren't advanced because someone told them they're advanced or they passed a test or a teacher said, I like you, and so you're advanced, right? We let advanced students be advanced. And students in Battle of the Books and these programs can self-select and challenge themselves. One of the parents stayed with me and said, my son has never read a book until they joined this club. And I said, you can't do that because you don't read books. They read all 22 books, and now they're reading other series. And they were competing up there. Kids advanced now. Parents a year ago didn't think the student was advanced, right? So access to all students, the opportunity to be advanced, challenging every student where they are to be advanced is a powerful thing this district started a long time ago when it said we're going to train all teachers with GATE skills.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want to make sure that, you got the mushy middle for a reason because that's the majority of the folks. But let's make those mushy middles advanced and be advanced. They might be mushy middle at our district, but everywhere else they're advanced, and they are advanced. And so I don't necessarily like always just talking about GATE identified students because it's just one test and it's just one type of intelligence. We need to offer it for everyone because someone might not test well on the GATE test, but they're great at math, but they're not a good writer, and vice versa. So all of our kids can be challenged in one way or another.
Kim, am I the only one that wants to keep the soccer tournament?
Well, I don't want
to go away.
I wanted to ask about the actual cost breakdown because these are just kind of the overview numbers. So we were spending $218,000. So what is that breakdown? Is that a certain amount by school? And then also, my understanding was we were previously including any local private school that wanted to be involved. Do they pay? I think just seeing 218, what is that covering? And is there any way to have a lot more if we were to continue it, a lot more contribution from local organizations to help sponsor? Yes, as well as the private schools contributing. I don't know a lot about it other than our PTAs, our kids were paying for the t-shirts.
Well, I would just say this. As far as the private schools, there is the tournament, which isn't ours, and we don't pay anything for that. The local sports groups, they do that. And, what we do is our students on our campuses practice after school. So we have a legal and moral obligation to make sure that those kids are safe. And in the past, we didn't have the same protections we have this year. But because safety is such an important value of this board, non-negotiable, this year we ensured that, for example, all of our volunteers were fingerprinted and cleared, that they had a certain amount of folks on every campus that have required trainings, heat stroke, first aid, those kinds of things. And that hadn't happened in the past. And so what our team did was figure out a way to have one manager at every school to ensure that every school had volunteers, not just those who could get them, that every school had cleared volunteers, and that every school in our district had somebody who had that training. So it's just really funding that one guaranteed protection at every school. They also stay with the students from when they leave school until when they're picked up. And that wasn't happening. And so this really is a huge safety issue for us. If the board didn't decide to fund that, we really couldn't in good conscience continue participating as a district, because we would be liable for anything that happened to any one of our kids. To that point, though, we can certainly look at, I think you mentioned, and maybe one of you mentioned, outside groups. Can they contribute more? Can they do more? Could they take on the fingerprinting? And we welcome that conversation. In fact, we've gone to like Costa Mesa United and said, if you'd like to have this event, we could even, help you do it, but this could be yours. You could protect our kids, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll continue to explore that. Our goal, though, with this would be to take all the things that you identified today and to figure out if we can, with the thoughts you have about other ways we spend our money, to build a budget that includes it, not excludes it. It isn't our interest to exclude it, because we know that how many thousands of kids participate?
Close to 2,000 across the
Close to 2,000 kids participate in this throughout the district. And so we'll look for a way to do it. If we couldn't find a way to do it and do these other things that we now know are really a priority in this academic competition, then we would have to bring it back to you and say, okay, we've looked for partners, we've looked for this, we can't find a way to do this and that, and we'd ask you to make a decision. Our goal will be to try to figure it out.
Okay.
Right?
So
Find the how.
The costs are one manager at all 20 schools, and then the background checks.
Well, yeah, we're absorbing that kind of like in kind, because we are helping, supporting all of that. They're coming through our existing resources, so that's kind of like an in-kind, another in-kind contribution. But that cost is to cover the coaches at 20 schools. No, I'm sorry. We had to be clear on our language, so I apologize for saying that. For the manager, because the manager, as Wes was saying, that one position that has the depth of the training and the supervision responsibilities, then oversees all the volunteer coaches. So every site still relies heavily on volunteer coaches for each of the small student teams. And some schools have as many as 200 kids playing, others have like 50 kids playing. So depending.
So it's one manager, it's like 3 months, right? It's not very long. So I'm not clear on the specifics of this at all. That's why I don't know where that number is coming for the 218. So it's one person that we would be paying for 3 months, and we're absorbing the cost. It's not included in this.
No, you remember that we brought forward a couple of contracts for you with Beyond Athletics, although we pulled that one. C&J. I always get the initials. And now Think Together has come in, and they're helping us. So we have a contract with them to find and hire and supervise the managers and ensure that they get the training and all of that, to make sure that we have coaches. Because what we also saw were some great inequities throughout the district in coaching. Some have like almost professional coaches, like literally coaches that have, relations with colleges and things like that, and others where we couldn't find coaches. And so one, coach was out there with 3 teams. And so we tried to address the inequities there, but safety was the paramount one. But really the number is 2 contracts to provide 20 managers was the contract, and then they do all of that work. We help them with the fingerprinting, the clearing, but yeah.
And the training.
And that was just this year. Again, we'll continue to look at that. We'll look for partnerships, grants. We'll look at ways to save money. And if we have to bring it back to you, we will. But we'll try not to. Yeah, thank you for the question.
So thank you for raising that. Yes, we'd love to include everything. I think to Trustee Pearson's point, like, am I the only one that wants soccer? Of course not. We all want soccer.
Yeah.
I want all of these things. But what I'm looking at is reality. And the reality is this list costs $5 million. We have this Irvine fund of $500,000. We now have this election we have to pay for another $500,000. So we're at least looking for $4 million to cover these things. And now all the Odyssey of the Mind, the math, the decathlons, all those things that we've just expressed that we want, that's going to bring us a way more above the $4 million. So I'm just more concerned with, okay, if we have a magical $4 million hidden, yes, I love all these things. But if we have to get realistic and, you know, something's got to go somewhere, I think the staffing ratio of the TK, that'll save us $800,000, that's great. Soccer Classic, if that's 200, that's $1 million we've saved right there. The sliding scale of summer school, we haven't talked about summer school in depth yet, but some things sort of are a need to have and some are a nice to have.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm just kind of fiscally conservative like that. If we don't have money, we can't do it. So I'm trying to figure out where are those pots that this magical other money could come from, because it looks right now like we need at least like another $4 million to appear.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to figure out where that comes from.
And I would point the board to, and thank you for that, this solutions matrix, because there is no hidden money. You don't, and you wouldn't support Jeff hiding money, of course. I'll say that for the public, that was tongue in cheek. We don't hide money. There is no hidden money, and there's no magic pot of money, right? There isn't. But what there are opportunities for us to do things like find savings in some of the things we're doing. As we look at support services, do we have the right support services? Should we be doing something else in that regard? And there's a savings therein. I think phase-ins, you know, the rate at which we're doing some of these projects, maybe the board would say, look, we're at a pretty good place with that now. Let's back off of that so we can do something else. The fees and donations, I mean, again, if we're the lowest in the county in 2 areas with regard to fees, isn't that a disservice to our students? And we could say, well, that's a great benefit to the community, but what about our kids? So that's an area where we'll investigate that with your support. And then delivery models is huge. There's a lot of, not hidden money, but there's a lot of opportunity in that matrix right there to say, we can do things differently. So that's what we'll do, is we'll work hard to see if we can figure out a model where we're not sacrificing, but if we do have to sacrifice, I think staff hears you loud and clear.
I would rather charge more for our facilities and still see 2,000 kids enjoy a community event. I mean, sure, we could ask kids to read 22 books, but they also need to be out there on the soccer field. And I've been to I've been to 15 of them, and my kids were, it was such an amazing experience. They still talk about it today. But it's the one time that the kids get to play with their classmates. I mean, most of our kids now are in club sports, traveling all over the place with all different kids. It's the one time that they get to be on a team with their own schools and competing here in Newport-Mesa. It's an amazing event. It's, you know, getting our kids out on the field, keeping them healthy. I would hate to see it.
I hate
to see it go away.
I also think that our board has been is innovative in the sense that, for example, we are offering CERP. How's that going to turn out, and how's that going to give us some revenue? We are looking into
savings. It's not revenue, savings.
No, like revenue, well, savings. Yeah, you're right. Good point. We're a lesser. We lease to private entities. Well, how are we doing on market value? Are we looking at those contracts? You know, there's ways to try to increase our revenue and savings. Yep. And then we also have, for example, there's the governor's student support block grant that's coming up. I know it's a one-time grant, but you know, how can we use that to our advantage as well? Fill in some other program in order to sustain this one. There are ways to also bring in from that side, that creative side, in order to be able to meet these needs that we know are important for our community.
If the Addis bill passes, that's $7 million a year ongoing.
By the way, does that come back to us? I like retro?
No, we don't get retro. It'd just be funding, but still funding ongoing. Think about that.
There's no money.
Now you've solved. There's your magic pot of money. It's called the Addis pot of money. Yeah.
I think for me, we've gotten this kind of narrow scope for very specific things that I think we've all discussed at a variety of points that we prioritize. I think one of the reasons we added student achievement as an item on our agenda for we used to only celebrate sports in our district.
Yep.
And so for us, I think we've talked about how all of these at various times are of value, and so I'm really cognizant of not cutting any of these. I think it's important to include all of them and figure out different ways to pay for them. I think we haven't spent as much time discussing how we could fund these and a variety of I think options. I think maybe the first year we do some like Battle of the Books. Maybe we lean on donations in some way, or we seek out partners. Like I think we haven't talked as much about kind of the partnership side. I think one of the things I continue to hear from different community groups and organizations is they have their own grants and are often knocking on our door, sometimes incessantly, saying they want to partner with us, and we don't respond to their emails. I can think of the Literacy Project Foundation that's been wanting to partner with us again for 10 years. There's a lot of opportunities for us that we don't have to fund with people in our community who have their own funding and or want to donate funds, like money, time, support, organizational staff, and we're not leaning into those as best as we could. So I would really like to see, before we talk about cutting something that I think is a huge unifier, like the Soccer Classic A, maybe the city of Costa Mesa helps with live scans, maybe similarly to what we've been doing with swim and getting people who are passionate about it all in the same room. And I know that's happened a bit with the Soccer Classic, but saying this is how much money we need, how are we gonna cover it, rather than us saying no before that we've really gotten to those stages.
Yeah.
I think Battle of the Books, I think it's great. I think there's a variety of things that we need, and similar to what Trustee Ursula was saying, there's a lot of academic kind of pieces that we can lean into, and I don't know that we've had even those conversations. And I think again, I remember when I first heard about Battle of the Books, I was like, why isn't this happening everywhere? So I think it's great to have those across the board. I think the other big, to me, like elephant in the room is we have almost a $450 million budget. These are things that directly impact students. So to me, I don't think they're necessarily negotiables. I would rather see what I've said, I think, from the dais a few times when we've talked about the budget, are very small cuts to departments that are still spending at the same level as they were during COVID. And so when I look at a department that's spending $60,000 a year on postage, but I don't know why they would be mailing anyone, those are the things that I would like to see us have more increased accountability around. I would like to see where we can have actual, not recommended, minor cuts for some consultants that we have some that it's just a line item that every year you have $1 million for consultants. Why? That's not needed every year. So I would just like to cut. I would like us to have greater accountability and discretion around some of the operational pieces, rather than having discussions around minimizing things that are essentials to students and really beneficial for their social and academic development.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that, because when you said it last time, kudos to Jeff and the team. They listened. Last year, we call it sharpening the pencil because it sounds nice, right? And we, sharpening the pencil this year, saved $5 million. $5 million, to your point. That pays for the stuff we're talking about. Jeff's going to go back and work with all the teams to sharpen the pencil yet again. He thinks we can do more of that. So that's $5 million now plus whatever else we're able to. So we're with you 100%, and that's why. And I want to make sure that the public hears as well. What I said a minute ago, I'll double down on. It's not our interest to bring you cuts right now. Our interest is to figure out the priorities of the district and you represent the priorities of our community, right? You're elected to do that. So what are the priorities of Newport-Mesa? And then look at all these great ideas folks give us and others to fund those priorities. And then if we couldn't, then of course we bring it back. But we're confident that with your support, with your good ideas, we can do this and so much more. You know, a year from now, we want to have a conversation where we're bragging about the savings from sharpening the pencil, how great these academic competitions have been, and then the next round of ideas that are going to take us to the next level every year, right? Those same kinds of conversations. So thank you.
To follow up on that, then, okay, so if the pencil has already been sharpened and you have this 5 million, then yes, we want everything on the list. But that was not my understanding that we had identified where this 5 million comes from. So if you already identified,
that's not what I meant to say. I'm sorry. We saved this year, but that was encumbered in other things for this budget. But we want to go back, and Jeff can speak to this. We believe we can even sharpen it more and have the department sharpen it more.
Yeah.
And so that's unrealized, but that's what we'll look for.
Okay.
If it's 2%, then that becomes what?
Oh, about 7 million.
Yeah.
okay.
Right?
Okay, so if that's already possible.
To your point,
I
right?
want everything on the list.
Yeah.
If that's there.
Yeah.
And say the mind and math decathlon.
Yeah, I was
some kind of math.
gonna say, I think we
Like
want
math.
a few more things.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's good to help clarify that and make sure that we all understand it, because now I did not before. So if it is there, cool. And my other question then is about this sheet that you've made of like phasing in support services fee donations. Who is like the equivalent, and maybe I'm naive for not knowing this, who's like our development director? Who's the one in the district staff who's going to go and procure these grants and talk to Costa Mesa United? Hey, we want to do the soccer classic. It's 218. Can you give us 50 or 75, or what's your going to chip in? You know, going to be, or swimming. You know, some swim funders. Hey, well, can you give us 100? We have this 450. Like, who's our fund development person that does that?
I would say they all do in their own area, but so many of these come from, it seems like, Socorro's area, that they do a lot of that community-facing, work. But I think the answer is it depends on the grant, but each of them looks for things in their space where their teams could apply for these. And I mean, think about the grants we've received recently that they did that are funding programs, and we'll continue to do that.
I mean, some of us that work in that field, it's like there's some natural funders that we can already think of for Battle of the Books, for the soccer classic, for the swimming. So like, just trying to figure out like who,
Give it
that's
to me.
a conversation that we can have of like, okay, these are
Yep.
things,
Love it.
if you're gonna find outside donations, these are the kinds of projects that, could likely get those kind of donations.
Love it.
Community engagement is one of our priorities. Here we go, let's engage.
Yeah, any of those, give those to me, and then what I do is go to the appropriate staff and say, hey, look, here's a resource, let's get after it.
So just to be cognizant of cutting and how that affects people, Jeff, how did you feel those cuts went over? Were with the sharpening of the pencil last year?
So when you're looking at our budget, which has over 10,000 lines, right? And people are like, oh, I'm going to spend maybe $5,000 on this. They're rounding up, right, to the nearest 10,000 or whatever, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of work in precision in making sure we're really precise on our budget. And so it's like picking up a billion pennies. That's the effort that we're involved in. And so and we shot for the moon last year. We missed it. But it was better than aiming for the gutter and nailing it. So we're getting better at it, and so this year we're taking another shot at it. And the direction has been, want to see really detailed rationale, and we want to see it rounded up to the nearest dollar, not to the nearest thousand. And so that's kind of where.
Because I guess from my and that's fantastic, because somebody who does budgets too, I know how that can go. But because I do hear from, certainly from our teachers and our staff, sometimes making sure, I just want to make sure that they have everything that they need to do and be their best. So yeah, if we're cutting, you thought you were going to spend, $2,000 on photography and you only spent $500. I mean, like, yeah, go for it. Go for all of those changes and those modifications when you're like coming up with all of the real numbers. But I just want to make sure, you know, just make sure that our teachers and our support staff and our, you know, and our department heads who do a lot of work, the unsung heroes in our district, you know, don't have to feel the effects of that.
Thank you for that support.
Does anyone want to start talking about summer school? We haven't done that
We
one
love summer school though. We clearly love it because we're not talking about it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we can sharpen the pencil, we would love to have summer school the way it is today. But Socorro, do you want to tell us a little bit about summer school and what we could, and you know, some of the ideas?
And it would be for the next year, on this year,
Not
already
this-
all set up. Okay.
This year's rolling. So, and this is particularly elementary summer school. Elementary summer school from the state grant is paid for 9 hours a day for unduplicated students. And those are elementary students who are Title I, foster youth, or homeless McKinney-Vento. So those students, we receive a grant from the state to offer summer school. Our question is, what else do we have to offer? And that's a 9-hour summer school. So that's the AM portion of instruction, generally till around lunchtime, and then after lunchtime we do enrichment activities of various types. The question is then, as Wes said, while we're one of the most diverse community funded districts, we also then have a large portion who are not part of that unduplicated student count. So for those students, what do we want to offer? Do we want to continue to offer something that looks like ELOP and the cost per that? And generally what we find ourselves spending right now is about $1,200 per student for the 4 weeks of summer. We are looking for ways to bring that down a little bit, and that would be really where we have play is the enrichment activities after school, because our employee costs are fixed costs. But the types of enrichment activities we offer after school is where we could constrict a little bit and just do things a little, you know, more like a Ford model than maybe a Benz. So that's what we would be looking to do. But even then, imagine the lowest we could probably get is probably 1,000 or 1,100, and so that you can kind of then cost out. So depending on how many students, and what we've done typically in summer school is around 2,000 students. And again, in the past, although it's looking a little different this year, in the past it's been generally 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 unduplicated, 1/3 non-Title I schools, non-Title I students, because it's by student. So we've been able to offset that, but the desire for parents across the district does seem to be growing for many families, and they're not all unduplicated. And so now ELOP funds can't pay for that. That does have to become a district cost. And how big or small we make that, again, our commitment is to the 180 days of school. That's where our biggest investment lies. That's where the force of the district is. The summer school program, much smaller, excluding ESY, which is part of their base services. But for us, that is a choice we make. And so summer school is something where we can build as big as we want or constrict as much as we want. We can have, it on 10 sites, except this summer because we have so much work going on. We could have it on multiple sites, but that's a cost. So those are all choices about how big we want the program. We have always 3 years, offered summer school across the district in places we thought were geographically best for many families to participate. We could be more selective in where they're offered because we know location matters for many families, even with transportation costs. We do offer transportation for summer school. Those are all different things that we can, again, scale back or grow, but it really is based on a number we're given where we can bend and move to fit that budget outside of the ELP budget. And again, I do just want to plant a seed that there could be a day, probably not in the next couple of years,
but in the future where even ELOP is scaled back at the state level. And so even what we've grown to be our normal base offering right now, that could change as that money constricts. So we always have that in mind and kind of build accordingly. And thus far, we have built pretty parallel. If we're doing this for ELOP, we're doing this across the district. But moving into the future, we could look at different options for non-ELOP funded summer school programs.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it being for the non-Title I students and families, doing it like a hybrid where it's not full day, it's not 9 hours, and then possibly an option with like a fee base that's affordable. I mean, you know, that's all. I mean, again, the creativity in what we can do. You're giving us this number that is the max, and then we and staff, under the direction of the board, can kind of be creative in that. And I think the important part is that we do offer it for all of our families, because I'm not, it's about all kids and all families. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you live, what your zip code is, it's a service that we need to offer. It's just we can again, because Newport-Mesa is really good at coming up with local solutions, whether it's zones or sites, we can do the same for summer school.
And we appreciate that you have done it across district. I mean, we hear so many positive things coming out from the summer school program that you guys created after COVID. I mean, it was really something that every parent has come to us and has mentioned how wonderful it was, getting those kids back socializing and including everybody to attend. It's amazing. I would hate to see it again. I would hate to see it go away. I don't know if we necessarily need to grow it, because I feel just like the 12 to 1, you know, I feel like it's wonderful the way it is. I mean, the parents are happy. I don't know if we necessarily need to grow it. It would be great to be able to offer it to our students. So.
And Jeff mentioned those one-time funds we had, so the learning recovery funds and other things like that are things we could add with ELOP to offset costs in the past. And now with those falling off the table, I mean, granted, sometimes you never know what's coming down from Sacramento, so could there be, you know, who knows what would come next. But that is one of the ways we were able to offset it, is because there was money set aside from the state for learning recovery for everybody.
And I think there is an option potentially to offer that really great academic core instruction that we have offered, and then you know, have for a nominal fee provide some of the extra you know, enrichment programs, because I think there is a deficit of affordable summer solutions for kids, and parents are looking for that, and that's why our summer school has been so popular. So, you know, even if it is for a nominal fee for those that, you know, maybe don't, you know, aren't unduplicated count pupils, it would be something to provide, because I think that there is a need, and I'd love to be able to provide that and it's another reason to keep people excited about Newport-Mesa in our district. So.
Thank you.
I have a question about, so what was offered, what will be offered this year is the $5,300,000 whatever. Then the additional cost projected of the $1.5 million. What does that additional cost do? Because it sounds like we're providing summer school for everybody all day right now with this $5 million.
Well, remember, this is ensuring that going into future years, we're going to continue to want to do that. So again, where we've been able to kind of backfill the cost of summer school, that money is going to drop off and will now be something we have to find other funds to fill it.
So it'll still be the $5.3 million, but we need to find that $1.5 million somewhere new. Is that
correct?
Cool.
And then you're also saying because of the makeup of the students doing summer school, we'll get less funding, because if the funding stream is mostly unduplicated.
The more non-Title I students we have in summer school, the more it will cost the district. And we will not be able to apply at least ELOP grant dollars. There again, Sacramento creates crazy things all the time. So there could be another stream somewhere that could be used for something like this, but it could not be ELOP funds. That is a very targeted grant.
I think it can be helpful to see other districts that do a sliding scale. I mean, there's got to be others that do that, and just how, I mean, I think to Trustee Wygan's point, I think it's something a majority of the families in our neighborhood housing costs are so expensive. I mean, yes, it is childcare for some people, but yeah, it's also the learning loss that we're still combating, which is the whole reason why we started summer school. So, and that happens to everyone regardless, you know. If you're not doing anything for 3 months, you could lose it, you know, and so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, but also make it inclusive while not necessarily putting us in the red, you know.
We will definitely begin exploring options about what that looks like locally, you know, with contiguous school districts and other places that look like us. We'll begin exploring immediately.
And again, priority, whole child support as one of our priority. Every minute you're in summer school, you're not at home unattended or possibly with attended, you know, with a sibling playing video games, staring at screens, and you're at school in a safe, risk-free environment, socializing and growing. That's just full support.
Without any screens. Without any screens.
Limited screen time.
With limited.
We're limited.
No screens.
So it's like, I don't see a downside. It's just we need to be creative.
Yes.
Because we are limited to the funding. And of course, ELOP, who knows how long that's gonna go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a couple of years, could be who knows what.
Yep.
So maybe starting to think of hybrid models could help long-term
Extended. Yeah.
planning.
I don't think many people at the state level believe it'll exist beyond 2 years. Right now, we've always had ACEs and things like that, always, but for years we've had something. So I think the exercise of your direction, us going through and looking at what are other ways to do this, will help us get ready for even bigger changes down the road.
Awesome. Okay. We've kind of gone through the list here. What else do you guys need from us? Speaking to you guys,
did we give you enough?
Did we give you enough info? Do you want more? We're all opinions. Got a lot of opinions.
Yeah. Direction.
Well, I think it's really, really helpful, and I think the focus on academics, advanced coursework for all students, not just labeled students, is something that I hear in our community is really important and throughout our community. And I think when you look at the national debate, there are those who are saying, look, we need to lean into rigor. Well, that's what you're saying. We need to raise the bar and make sure every kid gets there. That's what you're saying. So I think it resonates nationally, it resonates in our district, and I think we all agree with that. So,
well, then, you know, we know that we still need to bring up our reading and math scores.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know that. We all know that.
Yep.
It's a priority for all of us. But we also all know that there are other elements that go into that for a student to make that happen. So, so certainly we're all cognizant of that and, you know, and support that as well. But for me, truly, I really want our reading scores to go up, and I realize that testing isn't always the best way to determine that, and I understand that, but I just know we have the capacity and the skill sets and the knowledge, and certainly the will in our community to make that happen. So, yeah. Thank you for everything you're trying to do to get us there.
That's right, the PLT work that you supported, and kudos to our teammates in the field that are leaning into Dine with Data. Dine with Data is next Monday. We have our Student Achievement Leadership Think Tank where we fill a room full of our teammates who are doing the work saying this is how we're going to use this data to get better, and the site leaders leaning into those same kinds of things. And we're seeing the successes. Adams Elementary, being a California Distinguished School for the first time in the history of that school. Right? And you think about those of you that have lived in this community and know what that school has gone through and the different things you have tried, and the focus at that school is exactly what we are focusing on district-wide. And so it's in alignment, it's proof that it works. But Kaiser as well, they haven't been a distinguished school in 20 years. And they're doing this kind of focus. So it is working. We're on the right path. The things you've added today, I think, will really enrich and enhance those efforts.
They help students get
25 years at
We know
Kaiser.
that.
25
2000.
years.
Wow.
2000 was the last time they had it.
Years. Wow. So, speaking of data, I do have a burning question. Can you quantify what the cost of this election is going to cost our district in programs? Can you give us like an idea?
Like 3
What
teachers.
$493,000 of our special election, like what would we be losing as an example?
So,
I'm looking at this list here, I see a couple.
yeah, so if the question is, how many teachers does 500,000 buy?
Not necessarily teacher programs,
just
but
anything.
yeah. Because I'm
What would like the
It is 3
equivalent is
teachers.
three?
like, for example, I'm
Just
looking
a
at
weird way to
slide number 6. That would be, would be the Battle of the Book. It could be the whole school safety program. It could be the soccer classic and then the Battle of the Books. It could be, I mean, what is it?
Like a field trip is $8,000 because of transportation.
So is that kind of,
There's a long list of.
Science camp and field trips, what do we spend for each of those right now?
Yeah, so field trip course about 600,000. Science
So
camp
almost
is
pays for that.
okay,
a bit more.
okay.
We can't lose science camp.
Oh,
We love that.
But we'll be able to somehow find the money. Okay,
Well, with that, should we
all right.
close at 2:50? Oh, any other questions? Oh, yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for all this hard work and appreciate everyone putting all their time and effort into today. It really helps us and it was a really good discussion. So, thank you. All right, we'll close at 2:50.
All right, I had a question.